This is a great recipe to throw in the freezer. First, either in a pan or your Instant Pot, go ahead and brown your meat. Don't necessarily cook it all the way through, but try to brown it on the outside. Then add your seasoning. I just used some homemade taco seasoning. Then you're going to add 2 cups of chicken broth, 2 or 3 cups, and a can of corn and a can of black beans, and about a cup of salsa, and I believe it's a cup and a half of white rice. I will link the recipe down below. Make sure your rice is submerged in the liquid before you start cooking. You're going to set it on high for 8 minutes. When it's done, you're going to fluff it with a fork and then put the lid back on and let it rest for 5 minutes. Once it's had a chance to rest, you'll go ahead and stir everything together. To prepare these for the freezer, I put 2 paper plates, just regular size paper plates together, laid them out, and then distributed my chicken, rice, and beans evenly on each plate. I topped these with some shredded Mexican blend cheese, and then I allowed them to cool completely before placing them in freezer bags. Oh, I lied. I only started with 1 plate and then decided I wanted to put 2 plates for extra durability. Using a straw, I suck out as much air as I can and make sure they're well sealed, and then place them in the freezer. Okay, I have my frozen meal here ahead in my lunchbox. I'm going to take it out of the bag. Now I'm just going to cover it with a paper towel, and I'm going to put it in the microwave for probably 2.5 minutes. All right, let's see if it's done. Ooh. Done. And then I'm going to top it with some tomatoes and avocado and sour cream. For this meal, I'm going to start by frying up chunks of chicken breast in a little bit of neutral oil. Make sure that those are well cooked, and then pull them out and set them aside. Now, using the same pan, I'll add a little more oil, and I'm going to saute up my vegetables. I have some onions, zucchini, and red peppers in there. Then I'm going to make my sauce, starting with a cup of water, a few tablespoons of soy sauce and rice vinegar, and 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. Then I'm going to add 1 small can of tomato sauce, as well as some garlic powder and some onion powder. And then I'm going to mix in 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Mix it well so that there are no clumps, and then you're going to add 1 can of pineapple juice. When the veggies have cooked through, you can add back your chicken. I believe I left half of the chicken out so that I could make some without all the veggies. But I did add that can of pineapple and some salt to these. Then I added my sauce. You're going to continue to cook that and allow it to thicken up. Once it is thickened, it is ready to serve. You just garnish it with a little bit of green onions. This time I remembered to put 2 bowls together for extra support. I added my rice and my chicken and veggies, sweet and sour chicken and veggies, and topped it with a little bit of the sauce. And then I divided them up into different bowls and let them cool, and did the same thing. I sucked the air out with a straw as much as I could get out and set them aside to freeze. Like I said before, I did go ahead and make some without the veggies for my kids. You're going to begin by frying up your ground pork until it is well browned. You will then add 1 small chopped onion and a few teaspoons of salt. Then you're going to add 3 cups of water and deglaze the pan a bit, 1 can of tomato sauce. And then I had these freeze-dried green chilies, so I used those, but you can also use the canned kind. Then you'll add a couple cans of chili beans, Next, you'll begin adding your spices, some smoked paprika, red pepper flakes, garlic powder, chili powder, oregano, cumin, and I just eyeballed all these, a few teaspoons each, some more salt and pepper to taste. Now I decided I wanted this to be a little bulkier, so I added another can of beans. I think they were pinto beans. Now allow your soup to cool off a bit, and then you're going to portion it out into some sort of silicone mold and then put it in the freezer to freeze solid. Then you'll be able to just pop these right out and stick them in a freezer bag and pull them out and defrost them, as many as you need. Then remove as much air as possible, and you could of course vacuum seal them if you have a vacuum sealer. I began by chopping my chicken breasts into halves and then slicing the thicker side to have more even portions. Then I salted front and back of all these pieces. I then just used a jar to try to flatten them out a bit. If you have a meat tenderizer, you could use that as well. Then I placed them in a bag and put in some Italian dressing to let them marinate for at least an hour. I pulled them out of the fridge and let them come to room temperature, and then I fried them. But you could also grill them on a grill if you prefer. Allow them to cook through thoroughly, and then you'll remove them from the pan and allow them to cool so that you can handle them. Then I chopped them into small bite-sized pieces and set them aside. For the pasta, I cooked a package of penne, and I drained all but a little bit of the water and added a full package of cream cheese and allowed it to melt and incorporate into the noodles. I then added garlic powder and Italian seasoning and mixed that well. Then I added an Italian blend of cheese and Parmesan and mixed that well. At this point, you could add a little salt and pepper to taste and then add back your grilled chicken. This meal would also be good with some broccoli in this. I portioned these out, allowed them to cool, and then did the same thing as before and removed the air from the bags and then froze them to use at a later date. So here's what it would look like if I wanted to reheat this meal. Of course, you could take the bag off if you don't feel comfortable cooking your food in plastic and just put a paper towel over the top. I cooked it for 2.5 minutes and then I pulled it out and stirred it around and ate it just like that. Pretty simple. Be sure to test that the middle got cooked through as well as the outside. To make these burritos, I soaked some pinto beans and then I cooked them in my pressure cooker and drained them well. Once they were drained, I added some bacon grease. You could also add some lard or other kind of oil, a couple tablespoons, 2 or 3 tablespoons, some salt, and mix that around. And then I added a little bit of water. The amount is really dependent on how thick or thin you like your beans. So I used a potato masher to get them started, and you could leave them like that, a little thicker, a little more coarse, but I went ahead and used my immersion blender and made them smooth. Now, if you don't want to make your own beans, you certainly don't have to. You could get the pre-made canned variety. Then I took some tortillas and I put them down on plastic wrap and I put some cheese in them and just topped them with the beans, rolled them up, wrapped them up, and got them ready for the freezer. These are all great for a quick, easy meal that you can take to work or eat in a pinch of time. and they're really handy and helpful for anyone who's just cooking for one or just needs a convenient meal that's a little healthier than the store-bought ones.